Hello, Steve White, Trek89 for Steve White's 89. I'm going to try and do a short spoiler review for Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 7, Unification Part 3. Now, I had a lot of apprehension approaching this episode. As soon as I saw the title, I was anxious. I thought, oh God, what are they going to do? This is Spock's legacy. This is, how are they going to try and do a third part, basically, to the story? Now, if you're familiar with the story, it's Spock is on Romulus in the Next Generation era, trying to reunify the Vulcans and the Romulans. Now, I'm not going to go into all the drama about the alternative universes and the different timelines, and this Star Trek Discovery is not in the original series timeline with the original series Next Generation, Voyager, Enterprise, all of those. So the Spock in the movies, the JJ timeline and the Discovery timeline is not the same Spock. Now, Leonard Nimoy played him in the movies, but that's because they tricked him into thinking the Prime universe and Prime Spock was the same Spock that was from the original series, and it's not. But that character was still played by Spock, so I have a great affection for that character and that performance, and so it's very confusing. But basically, I was really afraid they would ruin his legacy and they would have basically the Romulans and the Vulcans still not unified, and Michael Burnham would come in and fix it in one episode and do what he couldn't in a lifetime and totally undermine him and destroy his legacy. That's what I was afraid of. So I didn't actually put this episode off. I actually rushed to see it. I procrastinated between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, and then I started watching it. Okay, so there's two stories, and the main story I'll get straight into. Basically, Michael is not sure she fits in Starfleet. She's unsure of herself. She goes to Tilly to look at the data they've been analysing from the black box from last week. After Tilly dresses her down, which is great because she needs to. She's been out of control for so long, and she's finally got some consequences. They approach the Admiral, and he basically reveals that the Vulcans live on a planet called Navarre, which supposedly is still Vulcan. They just renamed it, and the Romulans and the Vulcans have been unified, and I was so relieved. I grabbed my Spock, which he sits next to my computer and watches over me because I love Spock. I love Leonard Nimoy, and even though this is not the Spock from the original series, it's still Leonard Nimoy, so I still love him anyway. And I literally hugged him for a few seconds. Like they let you have this, they let you have your legacy. They didn't destroy it. They undermined it by saying you are who you are because Michael made you who you were. But because a woman is responsible for this man's achievements, they allowed him to actually achieve something. So you have to take your victories where you can find them. I was very happy to see that they allowed him to be himself and to still have that legacy and not destroy it. So he sits there and watches over me because he's Spock. Okay, so what we find out is that the Federation was depleting their dilithium and trying too hard to do big things, and the smaller planets, the individual planets were suffering, and they pushed Vulcan to test apparently this one technology. There were heaps of technologies that could facilitate warp drive and energies that could facilitate warp drive besides dilithium. But yet they're acting like there was this one that the Vulcans were working on, and they pushed them to work on it, and it went awry. And the Vulcans seem to be taking responsibility for the burn, saying that it started there. So I don't know if they have just written this episode poorly, or if they're trying to be mysterious and there are things they're going to reveal later, or if perhaps I just missed something. But I couldn't really understand how the whole time they've been saying we don't know how the burn started, and then they're saying, the Vulcans started it and they're taking responsibility for it. But Michael found that, and I forgot this, Michael found that the time of the ships being destroyed was all different, so it shows that the burn originated from an area and it wasn't Vulcan, for one, and they need the information the Vulcan had to work on this and try and solve this mystery. The Vulcans don't want to deal with the Federation because they had a bad experience with them. That's why they left the Federation 100 years before. They've got a very difficult balance with the Romulans, and Michael basically challenges them. They have to deal with it. It's a very cheap episode. They just the whole episode basically takes place in the conference lounge, which they bring in a few tiki torches and try and make it feel like Vulcan, because apparently they couldn't afford to show Vulcan. Her mother shows up, and this is why I couldn't keep this short. Her mother just shows up, and it's brushed over really quickly. She's basically there as a representative. She's basically been on Romulan, and she's now a member of the Colat Malat and one of the Sisters of Absolute Candor, and she's there to basically find the truth. So she reads Michael for filth because Michael doesn't know where she stands or who she is or what she's doing. And she says this woman cannot be trusted. She's betrayed her commander. She committed mutiny. She just was insubordinate like a week ago. She throws her under the bus, backs over her just over and over again in front of everyone. And eventually she breaks down and is honest. And the Romulans decide, okay, we are going to just give the information to the Federation because we're tired of the Vulcans holding everything back because they're so repressed, because they still have their cultural differences. And she's like, I don't want to destroy your culture. I'm going to withdraw my request. I'm going to give you all my information. You can deal with this on your own, and I trust you, because it's all about trust. I trust you to share your conclusions, basically. So she leaves, and the Vulcan president, because the president, of course, the rule of the planet has to be a woman, because everything in this show is a matriarchy, because they see the Federation in Star Trek as a patriarchy, and the enemy has to be destroyed, undermined, and we need to have everything ruled by like a minority matriarchy. And I'm not a misogynist. I don't hate women. I think women in power are great. I obviously wish Hillary had gotten in instead of Trump, and I think Jacinta in New Zealand is God. So this is not an issue. It's just, I think matriarchy is as bad as patriarchy. Replacing patriarchy with matriarchy doesn't achieve anything. I want equality. I want something where both men and women are equally, ruling and dealing with politics and the government and everything. So yeah, it's getting a bit tiresome that every commander, every captain, every leader of every community of every planet is a woman. It's just so obviously pandering to an agenda and to the wokeness. It's just on the nose. So enough of that. She walks out, and the president actually goes, okay, I trust her, and gave her the information. So the mother basically says, look, I'm staying on Vulcan, but for the first time I can say you know where to find me. They cry, of course. And she does, of course. They have to undermine Spock a little bit, because they say basically her mother was wondering, how much of what Spock became was because of who his sister was. Okay. So that is the end of the A story. Now, the B story, Tilly is offered to be number one, and she's not sure if she can do it. She goes to Stamets. He's a bitchy queen, of course, so he says, I can't take you seriously. I find it disturbing, the idea of taking orders from you. She left because apparently, the gays haven't evolved in 200 years, so he's just a bitchy queen. And then eventually he goes and he tells all the bridge extras, they get the bridge extras together, and they all have a little say yes party for Tilly. And they say, look, we'll follow you anywhere, we love you, say yes, be our number one. So they all cry, they all hug. That's resolved. Michael comes in with the data and is like, okay, we need to sort this out. The next episode is going to be sorting out what the burn is. So I didn't look too much into the preview for that. I don't want to try and think about it. I'm just going to wait till next week. It just comes so quick. This episode, I didn't actually avoid it. I actually went straight to it. Only procrastinated about half an hour because I needed the answer to whether they destroyed Spock's legacy or not. And then once we got about halfway through the episode, I stopped and turned it off because I was distracted by other things for a couple of hours, and I came back to it. But I watched this so you don't have to, but it's like every day seems to be Thursday. I never seem to get away from Thursday. But But yeah, so the episode wasn't that bad. There were also a few moments that drive me nuts, but you take your victories where you can get them. They didn't destroy Spock's legacy. They'd already undermined the character and subverted everything, but they did allow him to have this achievement and to have this resolution to find out that he did reunify his people, and he's now like this legendary figure on Vulcan, and that was nice. And they showed some of Leonard Nimoy playing Spock in The Next Generation, in Unification, explaining to how they needed to be unified and that, and it was a nice moment. It was nice to see him again in Star Trek, even though it's a different universe and it's not really a Star Trek show. I love Leonard Nimoy, so it was respectful on some level. But yeah, that's basically my short spoiler version. I know I couldn't even keep that to 10 minutes. I tried my best, but I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I'm just grateful they didn't destroy Spock. They undermined him on some level, but they didn't destroy his legacy, and he was able to be great. So I'm just glad. I'm just going to leave it there, and just hope for better next week, which I do every week. Okay.